Welcome, everyone. Good boy, Tucker. This is learning at its most fun.
Hopefully this has never happened to you, but if you've ever had a moment where you accidentally forget that you had something booked, or maybe you were booked in a private appointment and somebody double booked you for something else, that happens when you don't look at your calendar and you're not kind of living and breathing out of your calendar. So today's training session is all about the calendar, all of the best practices that go with it, and how to make sure that you aren't going to get double booked and you know exactly what you have to do that day. So when you log into Redtail, this is most likely your home screen. It's called the Today screen. And this is going to show all of your to-do items for today. Now, I'm probably going to say this multiple times because it is so important. Whenever you think of calendar, you are thinking of activities in Redtail. So activities are synonymous with your calendar. So if you're ever saying, I need to add this into the system for my calendar, or for a to-do item, a task, something to do in the future, you're always talking about the calendar or the activities. So if you click on the plus sign and see this activities option, you'll notice the calendar icon is next to it. So an activity is going to allow you to choose a time and date in the future to occupy an event. So it could be a meeting, it could be a phone call, it could be a task. You might need to cut a check, you might need to make a trade. Whatever it is that you need to do in the future, you can go ahead and add that into the system as an activity, and it'll occupy that time and that date in the future. So you do need to choose a time and date. And just as a best practice, right from this screen, you can't really see your availability. So as a best practice, you can right click on your calendar, open that in a new tab, and always have a tab open of your calendar. So that way, if you are on the screen, browsing around, doing a report, and someone calls in and says they want a meeting, well, you can click on that plus sign, add it in as an activity, toggle over to that calendar tab, and kind of peruse through to see your availability. So definitely keep that option in mind. Another tip or trick with the calendar that I like is, first of all, it's like Tetris. So if you see that, there's an overlap here and Danica is okay with moving to another time, you don't have to click on it and change that time. No, instead you could just drag and drop it and it'll allow you to move that calendar event as well. So if she wants to move to a whole nother day, you could just drag it on over, which is really nice. And this one here, you'll notice that this is marked as private. That means that there are permissions applied to this activity. So if you click on it, this one, in fact, is actually just called private event, ironically. But if you see the privacy options here at the bottom, the viewing access to this activity is restricted only to this team. So that means that, if someone that's not on this team sees this activity, they're just going to see private. And I mention that because I think it's important to also get private things on here as well. Let's say you have a haircut scheduled for, the 15th at 4. You could consider adding that into the system as an activity. And what that'll do, you could restrict the viewing access, of course, as well, to just yourself or just certain people. But that way you don't get double booked, because that's the whole point of today is, you're not going to be available for that time for a meeting or a phone call because you're getting your hair cut. So even something personal, you might consider adding in those as activities and marking them as private. So that way people don't double book you. All right, so this is your calendar page. I have this open at all times, like I mentioned, and we'll kind of go through the screens here, the options here, the buttons here, and then we'll jump back into the activity and explain that a little bit further, and then we'll show some of the integrations. So first you'll have this navigate option. This is great if, maybe you are planning your birthday party for next year and you want to go ahead and book that as a time off. Well, if you want to go ahead and see if there's something already booked on that day, but you don't want to have to go through on a week basis, or even if you toggle it to month, you don't want to have to toggle through 11 months. This navigate option kind of lets you do that a little bit quicker or a little bit less browsing, at least, where you can go to, that August 2023 date, choose on that day, and it'll bring you up that area or that time in the calendar. So this is just a quick way or a smaller way to go ahead and go somewhere in the future or somewhere in the past. You can go in the past as well. The next option you have here is actions. A lot of these options that you see here, probably the only exception is the top one and the bottom two. These other middle guys, these are all preferences. So if you click on your name in the top right and go to preferences, there is an area for preferences called calendar management. And calendar management, you can set most of those items to be defaulted to yes or defaulted to no. So if you want to show seminars on your calendar, toggle that onto yes. So that way, when you do click on that calendar tab, you do see these seminars. Now, the actions and the purpose for it being here as well is maybe just for that moment, you do want it on or you do want it off. This allows you to toggle things on and off. So maybe, you're really wanting to see the things that were completed this week. You could go ahead and hit show completed or hide completed, and it'll bring those on or off the screen for this instance. But to, permanently have it like that, you would want to do that underneath your name and going to preferences. And my preferences can be different than your preferences. So make sure you go in here and edit all of the preferences, specifically the calendar one here. You can change the default calendar view if you want it to be the day, the week, the month. If you want the calendar to start on a specific day, maybe you hate seeing it starting on Sunday because there's no way you're being booked on that day. You can have it start on Monday. The calendar start time and end time is super helpful because you should have this reflect your business day. If you're in fact taking appointments at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m., change it to that time so that way it's going to reflect that onto the calendar slot options. And speaking of slots, you have default time slots here. Mine are set to 15 minutes. So if we go back and have it set to more of a week view, you'll see, each hour has 4 little boxes. But if you want that to be different, maybe you only want it to be 2 boxes, you could change that increment to 30 minutes. If you just want it to be 1 solid box for the hour, you can change it to 60. So make sure you check off these options and see what works for you. But if we go back to the calendar page, some other options you have that are custom to you is your colors. So my colors can be different than your colors. We always say, mine can be pink, while someone else on the team could be 50 shades of gray. So whatever you want your colors to be, you can set them here. Calendar color coordination is based on activity type. So you want to make sure that when you click on the plus sign and you add in an activity, you're using this type drop down to go ahead and, tell yourself what medium of activity you're doing. Is it a phone call? Is it a face-to-face meeting? Is it a Zoom meeting? You could add those in as options and color coordinate them accordingly. So these are completely customizable by you. You could put whatever you want in here, but just as a suggestion, you might want to add something in like vacation day so you can see your vacations in a nice, pretty color and get even more excited for that vacation day. Now, we do get some questions about offices wanting to make this database wide. Kind of the only suggestion we have for that is to maybe, screenshot this and send it to your teammates and let them know this is the style guide of how we want your colors to be on your calendar, and they'll have to set that into their calendar. But that's the only way that calendar color association comes from right now, is the activity types, and it is based on username. So my colors can be different than your colors. If you're in a situation where you want, all of AJ's items to be one color, all of KB's items to be one color, you would have to kind of mimic this structure that you see here, where we have meeting AJ, meeting KB, and you'd have to do that with the other ones too, like phone call AJ, phone call KB, and then make all of AJ's one color and all of KB's one colors. That's an option too, but it's a workaround, and it's not really how the system is meant to work. Also, going on the actions, you have the print calendar option. This is going to give you a PDF of a view for you to go ahead and decide if you want to print off your calendar. That's an option for you. But also the other last option says subscribe to iCal feed. It's really tempting to want to think that that has to do with Apple because it has that I in it, but really it just means internet calendar. So what that means is you want this Redtail calendar to go into another calendar. I personally use this for my phone calendar. So I know you might run into a situation too where you want your Redtail things to be in your phone's calendar. And if you have Outlook and stuff, we could talk about that. How if you have Outlook turned on and Outlook's going to your phone, it's going to go to your phone as well. But if you don't, what I do is I open up redtailtechnology.com on my mobile browser and I log in, I go to the calendar tab, I go to the actions, and I hit subscribe to iCal feed. And what that'll do is it'll download the Redtail calendar link into my phone's calendar. So that way, when I do pull up my phone calendar, I will see that Redtail event in there. Now it is read only. So if you delete something in your phone calendar or you add something in your phone calendar, it's not by any means going back up to Redtail. It's just a view, a nice to see kind of thing. So that is an option for you if you prefer. Otherwise, moving on, the other tabs here, we have all users, all types, all categories. That might be what yours says by default as well, but this is where you can kind of play with what you want to see. So if you just want to see everyone's tasks and everyone is correctly marking their tasks using the type, you can go ahead and change it from all types to just tasks. So now it's just going to show the tasks for all users. Now you might want to break it down even further and say, I don't want to see everyone's tasks. I want to just see my tasks. And then you could isolate it to me, and it's just going to show your tasks. So that's what this is doing here, is it's allowing you to see what you want to see. Most likely the only option you would choose is changing it from everyone to me, or maybe you want to see you and your boss's calendar. You could choose them from the list, and now it'll put both of those calendars in conjunction. But remember, you would probably need to just hover over to see whose is whose, just because the calendar color association is based on type, not by username. All right, so that's for the calendar page. At least you can even filter things here. If you want to just see some meetings, it'll go ahead and pop that out on the list. But those are the options that are available for you. Now let's click on the plus sign and walk through the activities box. You do have an option here to select from a template. And if you are not using templates, start to consider if it'll add some value to your office. What templates does is it kind of helps with some human error, because let's say you have that expectation to your team that if you're booking a meeting, you need to change the type to meeting, and you need to, put this category and have this text in the description. Well, that's what the templates do for you. So that way you can say, okay, instead of making sure you choose those boxes, how about we make sure we choose that template, and then those options will automatically adjust. So you can set up your templates in the manage your account area. If you go to your name in the top right and go to manage your account, you'll find manage templates here, and you can build out some of those activity templates. We do have most of these as samples on our help desk. If you click on the question mark in the top right hand corner, you can click on the box here that says Redtail Help Desk. And there is a tile here that says Redtail CRM, or you could type into the search bar templates. But I like to just go to the how to handle area, choose these sample templates, and I'll even send this as well in the chat. But there's the activity templates. These are some options that we've kind of put together as a training team that you might consider if they would add some value to your firm. All right, going back to the screen here for adding in an activity, you have to add in a subject at the very least. So to add in or get to the create and edit area, you're going to have to add in a subject at the very least, and also add in a contact's name. So personally, I like to just type in the first few letters of somebody's name, and then it'll return back the results from the database. And we have a lot of duplicates here, but then you can see them here and choose them from the list, and then it'll be attached to that person. Now, if you've never added them before and you want to add them in to the system, just type in their whole name and choose this option here that says new contact in parentheses, and it will create that contact for you. Another tip and trick is to actually go into the record. Maybe you want to add something in for Carol. You can go into her record, click on that plus sign, add in the activity. And because I'm on her record, her name is already attached. So if you're on a record, it's going to retroactively put in the contact's name, because we're assuming that you're adding in that to-do item for that person. All right, so we'll just say we need to cut a check for Carol here. And then you could go ahead and choose the time and date. For this instance, we're cutting a check for Carol. Maybe I need to do this on Friday, but I don't need to do this at 9 a.m. or 3 p.m. I just need to do this at some point of the day on Friday. Then I can mark this as all day. And what that'll do is it'll sit up at the top of my calendar in the all day area, kind of like a to-do list. So you'll notice here on Wednesday, I need to run the client review quick list. I don't need to do that at 9 a.m. or 3 p.m., but it's up there for me to do on Wednesday. So that's what the all day does. And it's nice to make like a checklist up there for those things. And then for type, we'll mark this as task. For category, another customizable menu. A lot of offices keep this to general information and never change it. But same thing, there's a lot of value in this field. So if you're doing some money movement here with cutting a check, put in money movement and mark it as money movement and set that expectation to your team. So that way later you can say, okay, let's see all the money movements in 2022. And you would be able to pull that up very quickly. And then attendees. So right now it says me because it's assuming that I am creating this. So I want this for myself. But attendees, that means whose calendar do you want this to go on? If you want somebody else to handle this to-do item, you can choose their name from the list. If you want it to just go on their calendar, uncheck yourself. If you want to also, regulate that activity along with assigning it. Put it on both of your names so that way it'll show up on both of your calendars. But essentially, that means whose calendar is this going to go on, whose today page is it going to pop up on when they log in that day. And then importance and priority, it's really tempting to think this actually does something to the system, but really it's just visual. So if I mark this as high importance, what it'll do is on my calendar, it'll have a nice red exclamation point there to kind of signify this is high importance. If I mark it as low, it's going to have a blue arrow facing down to mark it as low. So it doesn't have any system effect. It's not going to, push those up to the top. It's just going to visually have an exclamation point or a down arrow. And same thing with priority. You have these numbers 1 through 6. You can think 1 is more important and 6 is least more important, or you can think that 6 is most important and 1 is least important. It's completely up to you. There's no system effect here either. All that will happen is when you're on the calendar, you will see that number along with that to-do item. So I'll go ahead and just choose some of these here just so we can show you exactly what we mean. But I'll click create and edit first because this really takes you more into the meat and potatoes of the activity. And then we can show it again on the calendar. But just some more options here. If you're going to the Cheesecake Factory, you can put that in here as an option just so your team knows if they need to take over this to-do item, they'll know the location. Percent complete, same thing. This does not have any system effect. It's just visual for you. If you mark it as 100% complete, it doesn't do the same thing as actually completing it. So it's more of a nice to have. All these 3 boxes are just nice to have. And description, this is more used as like an agenda or maybe some directions. So it's really tempting to want to put in the outcome or progress or changes onto this description area. But you actually don't want to do that because we had a lot of offices that were putting in their own date and timestamp and user stamp. And then what they would do is, put in the notes and maybe I cut the check successfully. They would put that here in the description area. But this isn't the most compliant option just because you can change this, edit it, and alter it, and it won't make any room for you to argue in an audit. So we created link notes here on the right, so that way you can use link notes as that running dialogue to the activity. So if things progress, as things change, as there's an outcome, you can add those here as a link note. So if everything was done successfully, we want to add the FedEx tracking number. You can put that in here as a link note. That'll be your most compliant option. That'll automatically date, time, and user stamp it, save it as a note onto the activity. And also, if I open up Carol's record in a new tab, you'll notice that it's on here on the contact level as well. So you'll want to get in the habit of using link notes as that running dialogue to this activity. And since we are cutting a check, you can link the account that you're cutting this check from. That'll save this activity and then a note onto the contact level and the account level as well. If we do have that FedEx tracking number, that receipt, you can attach that on as a linked document. That'll automatically, house it here within the activity and also put it underneath Carol's record in the documents tab. So if you want to attach that, you do have that option as well. And then notify team, this is just going to send an email to this team about this to-do item. So if we know Carol's coming in abruptly tomorrow for a meeting and we were expecting no meetings tomorrow and you want to make sure everyone's dressed appropriately, throw a notify team to all staff so that way it'll send an email to everybody, but it won't necessarily go on their calendar and be assigned to them. Privacy options, we talked about that to restrict the viewing access to everyone, a team, or just yourself. And then recurrence is great as well. So if you have quarterly check-ins, if you have reviews with this person annually, if this person consistently wants checks to be cut every 3 months, add in the recurrence here. So that way it'll create those all into the future. So we do have some pre-baked options in here, like monthly, weekly, annually. But if you find those are completely wrong, you're looking for a more quarterly kind of thing, you could choose custom and change that to, every 4 months, or be 3 months. We'll do 3 months. And then you could have it repeat on a specific day or a specific weekday. Share with advisor products that will only be relevant if you are using advisor products. Attendees in the top right, this means it's going on Tucker's calendar, like I said, but if you want this to go on someone else's calendar as well, you could choose their name from the list and now it'll go on both calendars and Teddy will get an email as well. You can turn those notifications off if you do prefer, but you'll see right here in gray if they are going to receive the notifications based on their preferences or if they are not. And then linked contacts, this is best used for professional practice if you have this event being applied to more than one person, maybe her husband, maybe her business. You could type in those options and it'll choose that person from the database or that business from the database. So it saves on both records. And then you have the options here at the bottom, like save and clone. This is great if maybe you have, your kid's soccer practice and you don't want to have to, it's not a repeat thing. Maybe it's just for the week and you don't want to have to keep typing out soccer practice. You can save it and clone it for one day, change the date, save it and clone it for the next day, save the date. And now that's 3 separate activities happening on those days that you didn't have to do as much typing for. Save and complete, that's one of the most important options because if you're adding in activities, you want to make sure you're completing those activities. If you don't complete activities, it's bad data, and I'll show you what that looks like. But the point is, make sure that as soon as this happens, we cut that check, we have a FedEx tracking number, everything's done, we save and complete it so that way it gets date, time, and user stamp saved as a note for history on all the records that I chose, the accounts, everything. Save, complete, and new is great if I'm like, okay, she wants a meeting also next week too, maybe. So it'll save this, complete it, and create a new one for me to go ahead and schedule that meeting for her next week. Delete, not really ever suggested, but it is there if you ever need it. And timeline. Timeline is going to show all of your additions, changes, and deletions onto this activity. So if somebody did make a change and you're wondering, who changed this? And everyone's like, not me, not me. Okay, well, I can go to the timeline and see who did change it. Right now, it just says you, because I'm Tucker. But if it was someone else, it would show their name. And then created by, created on, who created this, when did they create it, all of those details are there. But we'll go ahead and complete this. That way, like I said, if we go back to Carol's record, it's going to be automatically date, time, and stamped here and saved as a note for history. So now this is a nice note for me to refer to later. I'll show you what past due activities will look like, or if you're not in the habit of completing your activities as soon as they happen. If I click on this tab here that says activities when I'm on the today page, so you got to be on the today page and click on the tab here that says activities. I have my dates filtered to show past due. So here's bad data, 284 activities that are sitting here as if we never got to them. So we might have had this meeting with The Rock. We might have had this April review with Creed. We might have followed up with Bruce, but no one went in there and completed it. So it's sitting there as if this never happened. So if I complete this now, great, but it's also going to be inaccurate because it's going to date, time, and user stamp it right now. So there is no back stamping things. So if I followed up actually in April, but I complete it now, well, now it's going to be, date and time in September. So not as accurate as I'd want it. Now you might consider just checking everything off and completing them all at once, or reassigning, rescheduling, rolling them over, something like that. So that way you can take care of all this bad data at once. But then just know, this point moving forward, as soon as you do something, you get in the habit of completing it. So that way it has that accurate date and time stamp for you. All right. And notifications, I have this team meeting here at 7, and I think I have my preferences. If I go to my name and go to preferences, I can find the notification preferences here. My notifications are happening 60 minutes before, and I don't have a sound attached, but I can change that increment or that sound. But what that means is when it was set 6 o'clock, this bell rang with a sound or whatever sound I chose, and it lit up in red and it had a number there. So that's the notification that comes with Redtail is the bell will light up, it'll have a number and it'll have a sound. So if you click on notifications, you'll see what that notification was and you could dismiss it for it to go away. All right, so a lot of information there with the calendar, but just know that, we're not reinventing the calendar in any way. It's just a way to, occupy a time and date in the future. And with Redtail, you're most likely going to want to learn that activities means calendar. So activities means you want something to go on your calendar. Now let's talk about some integrations. Most likely, you might still be using something like Outlook or Google Calendar, and we do integrate with those. We created our own tool called Retriever Cloud. So if you click on your name in the top right-hand corner, you can go to Manage Your Integrations. And if you click on your name, go to Manage Your Integrations. This list is in ABC order. So if you go down to the letter R, you're going to find that tool I mentioned called Retriever Cloud that we built out. So you'll want to make sure this is set to on. And if you click on that action icon, you can hit settings and go ahead and enable an Outlook sync or enable a Google sync. So right now mine says disable because Outlook is turned on, but if not, it would have that enable option. And you can choose if you want contacts, activities, deletions, completions, synced over, and even what activities or what contacts. So those are options available for you. If you click on that action icon and hit support, I know I'm a visual person, so depending on if you're using Outlook or you're using Google, you could check out one of these help articles and it will go through screenshot demonstrations on how to set it up or what certain things mean. But my most favorite part on this page is a visual way here through a chart showing what information goes back and forth. Redtail to Outlook is only happening for deletions unless you're checking that box. And then you'll notice that if there's any terminology changes, we put that here. So in Redtail, we call it a subject, where in Outlook, it's called a title. So you'll be able to see that here. And you might even be in a situation where you're using something like Calendly, something like that. We're not integrating with those. right now, and you'll have to use a third-party integration like Zapier. And that's what I do as well is I go to, Zapier.com, and just for searching purposes, I'll just search Zapier and Redtail just so I can demonstrate to you. There is a page that they have here kind of showing you what Redtail and Zapier will connect with. So Calendly is an option here, but you can type in whatever in there and it'll show you some of the options that are available. So Zapier is kind of like an if then statement. So if an invitee is created, then we'll create a contact in Redtail. Or if an invitee cancels, then cancel in Redtail. You can choose what you would want to be those trigger events and the if and then statement. So I know I use Zapier for my Calendly. So if somebody creates a Calendly appointment, it automatically adds it into my Redtail calendar, and it automatically even creates a Zoom link and sends that over. So Calendly or Zapier is the way to get anything integrated that's not already integrated with Redtail. And I think they offer like 5 Zaps for free, or at least I don't pay for mine. So definitely check that out. So that's what we wanted to cover today in regards to the calendar. Make sure you know that, when you're using your calendar, you're basically using activities. We always say if it's not in Redtail, it never happened. So add everything in there, even those personal things. You could just mark them as private. Get in the habit of completing things as soon as they happen. Maybe, this team meeting happened. We just talked about vacations. You could add that in as a linked note. And then as soon as we do that and we're happy with that, you could complete it so that way everything is done successfully. And then if you go to your calendar page, you can drag and drop things. I also want to show that you can double click into things if you want to schedule something for tomorrow at 1. This will save some clicking. If you double click into there, it'll go ahead and occupy that time and date for you automatically. So that's another tip or trick for you. And then of course you can integrate with some of those other calendars. And then the notifications, the only notifications that are part of Redtail is that bell option. But if Redtail is going to Outlook and you really love that calendar Outlook pop-up box that happens, well, if you have that integration turned on, Outlook will pop up with that box as well, or Outlook will push to your phone as well. So definitely those options are there. If you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to our team. If you click on the question mark in the CRM and choose contact us, it'll open up our contact page where you can call us in the moment if you have any specific questions, and we can help you right away. That number is 1-800-206-5030. But otherwise, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much and have a great rest of the day. Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.